I mean, I remember distinctly getting my first page rate up at Marvel. Rich Buckler asked me to ink Black Panther, and the two of us were chasing Roy Thomas through the offices of Marvel, asking what my page rate was or could be, and it was $40 a page.
That's amazing.
Which was, to me, it was. Oh, I could eat more beans and hot dogs.
This is the Inkpulp Podcast.
Welcome. What's up?
Hello. We're going live independent of Mattteo, and I'm very grateful, right? Because if you think a 3-square like interview thing that I'm looking at on the desktop here is like intimate and tight or whatever it is, a little bit claustrophobic, with Mattteo and his fucking ego, it would be out of control right now. I would need to have an ultra wide screen. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us one more time. I'll shut up and introduce our amazing guest,
Please,
Mr. Klaus Janson. Hello, sir.
Hey, good morning, Eric. How are you? Good.
Thank you for allowing us to ruin the better part of your morning.
Look, if it wasn't you, it would have been somebody else, so it's fine.
Sure. Go with a ruiner that you know is what you're saying.
Special. I feel so special.
I think that's true.
I was joking around.
Last week we were gonna, or the last time we were gonna record with Klaus, we postponed it. This is before the sickness because, Klaus is a legend and was busy visiting the set of The Punisher. Is that correct, Klaus?
Daredevil.
Oh, Daredevil. Oh, it was Daredevil.
Right.
But
boot Shawn now for messing that up. I'll talk to you later.
I thought it was The Punisher. I just assumed.
The Punisher is definitely in it, if that's any consolation, Shawn.
And did they invite you because of your run on Daredevil and the creation, like you created Data? Was that his name for Punisher?
They invited me for just publicity, I think, and they were taking pictures, and I'm sure at some point they'll promote my visit. I think Frank was invited the next week. Ron Garney was there when I was there, so nice. I like Ron a lot. So that was fun.
Ron's great.
Yeah, he is, absolutely. But it was great meeting. I'd never met Charlie Cox. I hadn't met John Bernthal. And I got to sit in the director's chair and watch them film a fight scene with Punisher, which I thought was amazing. And just to say, since they paid me to say this, kidding. What I saw looked absolutely amazing. I mean, it was beyond anything that I expected, and it really made me wanna see the new season.
Awesome.
It's really, really impressive what they've done.
That's so cool. Yeah. Okay, so that's your financial obligation to hype up that particular franchise.
That's right.
You're always
$47, by the way.
Because they charge you. It was supposed to be $50, but they charge you for the craft services. You know what I mean?
That's right, for the couscous that we all enjoyed.
Yeah. One coos was $1, was $20. You put couscous in there.
Each coos.
What happened to Mattteo, by the way?
Oh, he's kicked him out early.
Okay, great. All right. Okay.
We said it's going to be a classy show. Get your Parmesan ass out of here. Is he like that's the term for him?
The truth is we wanted to really celebrate the legend that you are, Klaus, and we were worried Matteo's ego would get in the way of that.
Yeah, here's the thing. Like I'm looking up. There's articles after articles of Klaus. By the way, I was just right before you signed on, Klaus. I was watching your sci-fi interview, and I was telling Shawn, this guy. You were talking to me about a voice and a face made for radio. I'm like looking at your video, and I'm like, this guy is so freaking handsome. There's no lighting scenario in which you would like look bad. You'd either just look handsome in dramatic handsome or like interview handsome.
Dramatic handsome.
I'm checking the time to see how much longer we have for this.
I can keep going. So in the spirit of that, right? As I was thinking,
Sure.
which I was just discussing this with Shawn. Getting ready for the show, I thought like, Klaus is so freaking legendary. What is he doing with guys like us? Like, like when we're at shows, right? You're the guy. As I'm reading, by the way, I'm going to show this photo. I'm going to share it with Jamie. We can show this photo of you and the quote is pretty funny. It says, "When I ink an angry panel, I ink with an angry line." That's quote unquote by Klaus Janson. That's pretty freaking nice. Only you could say something like that, and I can hear it in your voice.
Yeah, and that's legend.
I always when we're at conventions together, it's all I can do not to hover around your shoulder as watching you draw or doing sign. Just be in your presence. And I thought, like, what is this guy doing with us? You know what I mean? Like, what is
I wonder
the circumstances that brought you here?
I am learning from you. That's what I'm doing.
No, I don't think that's true, but that's very kind.
Well,
that's amazing.
Let's just say, Eric, I have your a lot of your posts that you do. I have them on my desk. I find that your ability to convey energy and movement is amazing. Right,
That's
Shawn?
kind.
Am I wrong?
I second that.
Yeah.
There's a person in the background, and you guys can't see them, but they're going like this, like extend this part, because I rarely get compliments on this show, and it's a drag. Now, there's a guy waiting in the green room. Mattteo right now is waiting to get access, and as soon as I release this dumb shark, right, his ego is just going to start gobbling up.
It's like Jaws 3 when they open the cage and let the shark free.
Yeah. It's like that scene from Jurassic Park where they train the velociraptors to respond to click commands, only less smart. So here we go. Get ready.
Jamie, you gotta edit the cage opening when we let Mattteo in here.
Here comes the ego. The ego has landed. Here we go.
Fratelli!
Hello, everyone.
Ciao.
Sorry, everyone. Hello, Klaus. How are you?
Mattteo, good morning or good afternoon, as the case may be. You are in Italy, I
it's evening here. Yeah.
Evening. Okay.
Sorry for the
You're good, man.
delay.
No, it's okay. We did not miss you, so it was fine.
There it is. See that?
I guess so.
That biting humor. That goes under the radar so quick, and I think that's a generational delivery, right? Like I can't deliver. I can't
Much
deliver
like
a
Jack
long
Ritter.
I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to show this picture of you, and let me say so. Like, here's a bit of the interview, and again, I want to find this magazine. That says, do you think, would you characterize your work as sensual? By the way, this is from that same, this is you saying it, Klaus. And then Leighton goes, no. And just a period. I can't imagine in that conversation what the delivery of that may sound like, the context of that. And so Klaus, being the gentleman that he says that he is, backs away from that. He goes, I wouldn't either. You're right. It's so Klaus. As I'm reading that line, knowing him, for a little bit now, I can hear him deliver that line similarly to what he just said to Mattteo. I'm like, yep, that's that amazing delivery, that biting humor. It's so under the radar. And if you're a different kind of person, it would just knock you out at the knees. But yeah, it's great. This is great. I get the exact opposite of what you said. I always get the feeling of passion/power. No matter what emotion you're trying to express your inks, I never got the sense of a cold clinical approach. This is Dennis Cowan speaking of your body of work, Klaus. And then you respond by saying, I'm glad you said that because I was almost going to take what Joe said seriously. And that's in reference to Joe Rubenstein's comment. And here's the thing this is a small little segment of that magazine. And that's why I'm so enthusiastic to go find the actual physical hard copy. This is a group of artists who are just seemingly in the first of all in the height of that version of comics, right? But also seemingly very, very comfortable with each other. I don't know what kind of history that you have, but when I read this, I thought like, this is a much classier version of what we do on this show.
I was gonna say, sounds like us if we grew up.
And to be honest, it's not that hard to be classier than us. But...
Exactly.
Upgrading from this show. What I'm saying is there is a group of men, grown-ups, talking very intelligently. And you can tell it's coming out of a level of respect and a back and forth and blah, blah, blah. Like, we're children on this show, right? We are. Like, if we all stand up at the same time, we're all wearing diapers because we never grew out of the sensation
Klaus,
of not wearing them all the time.
How did you fall so far from that interview to this?
That's the point that I'm trying to get at, is like, I'm setting up the scenario in the context of like, what are you doing with these infants, these toddlers that are way below you? What's going on, Klaus?
I had a couple of minutes this morning, and I thought, what the hell? I'd give it a shot. Okay.
It's his charity. He feels bad for us.
It's charity, yeah. Yeah, you got to stop.
I think you're already regretting it, right?
I think very, very well put, Mattteo. I appreciate the support. Yeah.
Klaus, I gotta say, every interaction I have with you, I laugh a lot, and it's a very endearing quality you have. You're always full of laughter.
I appreciate that a lot. There are people in my life who do not think I'm funny, and I don't understand that.
I don't understand that either.
Yeah. Including most of my family. My family doesn't think I'm funny at all.
I suspect it's a different kind of humor.
I'm not sure what comes first. But that's nice of you to say, Shawn. I look forward to, I'm going to see you at Terrificon, right?
No, I can't do Terrificon. Are you doing Heroes?
Yes.
Okay, I'll see you at Heroes.
Okay, good. We'll have a
To be fair,
you do a lot of shows.
Yeah. Go ahead, Manny.
Off and on. I think last year I didn't do as many, and this year I'm doing a little bit more.
But is it something that you like? Have you always used to do a lot of shows? Because to me, there are a lot, even if you do like less than usual. But
right.
Have you always done a lot of shows, or is it something that you've been doing like lately? Because since we met and you started working with Jason Essential Sequential, that's the agency that we all work with. I see you super active, at least for my standards. And is it something that you started doing more when you started working with Essential, or is it something that you've always done?
No, you're exactly right, Mattteo. I started doing it more when I kind of hooked up with Jason. And mm-hmm. He pushes everybody to do as much as they can.
Yeah,
he makes money off that.
I didn't want to say that, but thank you. And there was a time, to be honest, there was a time maybe 10, 20 years ago when I really got kind of turned off by traveling a lot, just the mm-hmm. act of getting on a plane and traveling. And some of the scheduling, I was still teaching. I'm not teaching anymore. So that freed up some time.
When did you stop teaching, Klaus?
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
2 years ago. I'd
really?
Done 30 years. And
the last conversation we had about teaching was in Boston. We were at breakfast and you were
right.
dealing with some nonsense. Was that just the final straw? After that, you're like, I'm done with this?
I think, yes. The answer is yes. Something happened a couple years ago, and I think it's somewhat was aggravated by COVID and being online and teaching online, which I really hated. But the kids changed.
Yes.
The generation. Do you agree with that, Shawn?
Oh yeah,
You're
absolutely.
nodding your head. Yeah. Well, what's your experience? Because my experience, just to say, was that they had a different outlook on life and work and education. And
when you say
felt
different, do you feel they didn't value education? They didn't value like the traditions and history of what they were learning? Is that what you're saying?
I think, we can kind of dissect it and play with semantics, but I think that you're right. That's about right. The way I would phrase it would be that they became a little bit more closed off to learning and information. They seemed to think that they had all the answers.
Right.
And so that was a very, very difficult thing for me to overcome.
I don't know how any teacher overcomes that. I mean, if the students don't want to learn, how do you teach?
That's right. And I'm an old white man too. So I walk into the classroom, and there are certain preconceptions that come with that. So there's an immediate resistance to it.
Yeah.
But just to say that I did 30 years of teaching without taking any time off. And I think that I was able to see the generations change, from like the 1990s and the 2000s to where we are today.
Did you see it as a gradual shift towards a direction, or was it more like peaks and valleys?
It was a gradual shift, but it was really aggravated by the pandemic.
Yeah. See, I felt that starting when I left teaching. I saw the beginnings of it, and
when
that just
was that?
happened.
When was that time?
2000. I left teaching. I want to say it was 2014 or 2015 is when I saw this shift.
To be fair, right, Klaus, you have the excuse of the pandemic where that is just a formula of making people crazy, right? And let me not forget, I think there's a component here too where it may be a generation or a combination of a lot of things, but I feel like there's a generation of artists now that are, rather than looking for teaching, learning, and like elevating their craft, they're looking for confirmation. And you throw that into the mix, right? That gets really poor by way of like being able to impart them with a level of knowledge, because as soon as you have anything critical, it really starts to wear at them. Wait a second. You're supposed to tell me how good I am, not where I can improve. Okay. So in your case, you had the actual genuine reason of a global phenomenon, a global pandemic. In Shawn's case, he doesn't have that reason. So like the reason why people
here we go. Shit on Shawn
on him.
Here we go.
Right. It's not because like some weird thing in society. It's just like Shawn just started dropping F-bombs on everybody. That's why students rebel. Like I would think that's why people would get mad. And he wasn't even reserving it to the students. He was doing it to the staff, like.
Look, and just to say, because I feel a little guilty for. I think that at a certain point I aged out too.
That's it. Yeah.
And I probably lost to some degree the ability to be a good teacher. And that weighed heavily on me because
That's fascinating.
I don't want to be a shitty teacher,
Yeah. What made you think you had lost the touch as a teacher?
I think part of it was the age difference. It finally caught up. I was always able to relate to the kids. And now there's a 50-year age difference. Which is a lot. And, I can't talk to them in the language that I think I used to be able to talk to them.
Right.
So, part of it was that I'm not I'll make a joke, I'm not, I don't speak Taylor Swift, right? I don't, I don't know how to, to connect to to the younger generation as much as I used to. So I think, that was a big revelation to me. Yeah.
Again, Shawn doesn't
Where
have
were
that
you
excuse.
teaching, Klaus?
At the School of Visual Arts.
Okay. And what specifically were you teaching? Like comic books, inking, what?
I think it was I like to think of it as a soup to nuts about storytelling. It would be, I'd give them an assignment, a 3-page little story that I would write, and I'd ask them to draw it up, and we'd go over it and critique it, and then the second semester they would write their own story and draw that.
And was this was the kind of track that Will Eisner built at SVA?
Yes, that's right. And a whole bunch of good cartoonists were at SVA through the years. Carmine
wasn't
Infantino,
Becky a student of yours? Yeah,
that might be true.
I'm pretty sure she was.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of people that I'm really happy have succeeded. Isaac Goodhart, who's working with James Tinian. James Herron was a student of mine. Ian Bertram, who got the...
Ian was a student of yours. I didn't know that.
Yeah. But there are some people... Gerard Way was a student of mine. But there are people like that you don't really teach. James Herron was, good from day one. Ian Bertram was, good from day one.
Do you... I would like to think that students would come into your classroom throughout the years of you teaching, knowing who you were, knowing your body of work, and coming in excited to learn from a master of this medium. Did you find that to be the case? Did it change over time?
It did change. It began to, I think the kids were less impressed with me as time, or my, record, my resume. As time went on, they were, less impressed. I'm a mainstream kind of guy. That's my reputation. And a lot of the kids are into very indie, which I am too, but that's not my record.
Right.
Yeah.
But the medium in and out, whether or not your style leans mainstream, how it works. I would hope that they would come in knowing that, and you could teach anyone, mainstream or not.
I think that's true. I think that the kids were not able to transfer that over. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was part of the resistance, which is fine. I'm good with that.
Are you happier? Are you happier now just working and not teaching?
I actually am. I have to say. Let me say this, if I can. The teaching for me, even though it was one class a week, right, 3 hours, it was so stressful because I really took it seriously, and I graded their homeworks and prepared classes. And after a class, I would usually be, really down on myself and depressed and thinking, oh my God, I failed again. I don't have that right now,
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
And I'll be the first to admit that I fail in different ways now. But at least I don't have that,
You failed in choosing to do this podcast.
Not at all. I couldn't think of a better way to start the day.
Because 3 weeks ago, we were supposed to have the original version. We had scheduled to have a version of this podcast. I got sick and Mattteo got sick. Now, to be fair, I don't know Matteo's situation. I don't know if he was truly sick or whatever, but I'll tell you now.
No, I wasn't. I was ready to go.
Yeah, I was not sick. Right. But for the benefit of you and your longevity, I was like, how do I save Klaus from this gummy bears infused?
Gummy bears.
The gummy bear infused podcast. Is that what you're saying?
All right, Jamie, it's time to put a gummy bear in place of me, Eric, and Mattteo.
I was trying to save you from us, but here you are anyway. So again, we are very, very grateful for your time.
Thanks, Eric.
It's an interesting thing to think. Like I not having that personal experience. I've only ever, I don't know. Like it's interesting to sort of like open the classroom to sort of like, hey, here is a library of knowledge in your instructor. Those are the rules. You basically, like, similar to a comedy club, you walk in, this is going to be comedy, this is going to be stand up. A lot of it's going to be satire. A lot of it's going to be like poking fun at people. And then, I've seen audience members who go in there and expect some level of like comfort. Right. So similarly, you're right. I've seen it now where it's like, oh, it's happening in comedy clubs. I don't know why I'm so surprised that it's happening in classrooms. Like they walk into a classroom, the right expectation had been set right from the word go, right? As soon as you signed up and said, hey, this is going to be your instructor, it's so weird to go like, well, that's not what I want. That's not what I expect. Why did you sign up for that? It doesn't jive with me because I think I'm thinking on, with a brain from planet Earth as opposed to fucking Planet Gummy Bears. You know what I mean? Like, and also to your point and to Shawn's point, it's like and Mattteo can actually, what's great is that you guys are the ones that have taught in schools before, right? I don't have that history behind me. So it's interesting to think sort of like, the information, regardless of generation, regardless of its time frame, still relevant. It's not necessarily, you're not teaching style, right? You're not teaching like the way to draw. You're teaching the way to storytell and make for a good comic book and an enjoyable, immersive experience. It's really intriguing and somewhat gnawing at me that somebody has had the pleasure of going in and saying, hey, Klaus Janson is an instructor in my school or an instructor in my class. I get to have his, semi-undivided attention for 3 hours in which I can put stuff in front of him and say, how do I hone my craft? And yet they couldn't get past whatever internal program that was happening in the background for each and every single one of them. So that's heartbreaking, but it is encouraging that you say, hey, that was super stressful for me. I'd feel like a failure. Now I've taken that off the table and I'm that much more productive in some other case. So to that, I'll find that silver lining.
Yeah. And I think we all get left with more Klaus comics at the end of the day because you have more time to do them.
And I really, I think that in some ways, this period of my career has been very invigorating for me.
In what sense? Like when you say period, what's the thing that has come? What tumblers fell into place that made you go, wow, this feels really, really good again?
I think that the primary tumbler that fell into place, which is a good phrase, was getting off the monthly grind, the monthly deadline. In retrospect, I realize, just to say this year, 2024, is my 51st year. So I've
congratulations, man!
Wow. So I've been, doing awesome. This. I mean, even the 50-year mark, was amazing. So I've been doing, roughly a book a month or 2 books a month sometimes for 50 years. And in retrospect,
wow.
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah, that is not a sprint. That is a marathon, Klaus. Congratulations, man. And there's no sign of ending. There's no finish line in the foreseeable. I don't mean to make that sound daunting, but it just goes to show how relevant your work still is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I hope that's true. But I think that what happened is getting off the monthly grind. I realize how damaging that is to your innate creativity, because when you're you guys agree.
Absolutely.
I'm impressed.
Absolutely.
If you want to, please jump in. Mattteo, anybody? Do you want to?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's what I'm trying to do with my book. Right now, I'm struggling, but one of the main things that I'm trying to do with my book is trying to work without deadlines. So the book is done when I say it's done because I like the book, instead of, the book is done because I decided that it's going to be done by I don't know, May 15th. Therefore, I got to do anything in my, in my capabilities to my abilities to, finish it by then. On the other hand, I mean, there's a value in the deadlines, meaning that some people and some personalities without the deadlines would never be able to do that. And that's why I was saying I still struggle with that, because I'm used to, a deadline, meaning, an exterior factor that tells me, hey, the deadline is coming. So you better, start working hard. Otherwise we won't make it. And, but yeah, absolutely. You start, as you were saying, you start focusing more on the quality and, creativity more than just getting the work done. Even though, again, there's a value to getting the work done, because there's a lot of people that can't make it. Even when they have deadlines, they can't even respect that.
Right. There's something that happens when you're doing a monthly, when you're dealing with a monthly deadline, which is that your satisfaction derives from hitting your mark, from getting the book in. And now I find the satisfaction comes from doing a page that I'm happy with. That's a big difference.
Absolutely.
And I find, just to say, I find that there's something emerging because of the time difference between having a deadline and not having that monthly deadline. There's something creatively happening. I'm much more in tune with what I'm doing and what I want to do and what I want the page to look like. And you have the opportunity, to be self-indulgent. You have the opportunity, Mattteo, I'm not sure if you experienced this, but if I don't like a page, if I have the time, I will without hesitation, redo it because I have a better idea. And that's awesome. The satisfaction you get from that is, satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely. Fulfilling. And let me ask you something. Was it easy to make the switch? Because for me, it wasn't the switch between, working on a deadline. So basically a page a day, which was my rhythm, between that and just the page is done when I like it, as we were saying. Right. Did it take you sometimes to make that mental switch? Because in my case, I had to stop and I'm like, why am I rushing? Like, I'm still in deadline mode. Like, I'm still in 1 page a day mode. So as soon as I saw the middle of the day approaching and I was still penciling, for example, I caught myself thinking, hey, I got to rush up because, I'm still penciling and I still have to ink this page. And then I had to stop myself. I'm like, no, like I can't keep penciling and start inking maybe the first 2 panels and then finish it tomorrow. So was it immediate, the switch for you, or it took time like it did for me, for example?
It did take time. And it also, in a very psychological or emotional way, the part of making the switch from a monthly deadline was that no one was offering me a monthly book anymore. And so, in an emotional and psychological way, I had to deal with, feeling, I've aged out of the business, or, people don't want my work anymore, or, people don't know I'm alive anymore. The usual things that I think we all go through. And it took some time to adjust to that. It took some time to adjust to dealing with editors and publishers in a different way, making them aware that I'm, still around, I'm available for work. And, if somebody offered me a mini series to ink Brian Hitch, I would do it because, it's quality material. But, I'm getting a lot of fulfillment from penciling and inking my own stuff.
That's awesome.
Go ahead, Shawn.
Yeah, that's great.
You were talking.
I was just going to say, Klaus, I know you're saying that the publishers slowed down in calling you, but were you getting offered jobs, and upon seeing the work, were you turning stuff away because the work was not up to snuff?
Yes.
And is that
That's so freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Is that a newer trend that you're seeing?
That's a good point. Yeah, it is. That's right. It is. You mean the trend being that the work wasn't as good as it could have been or should be? Or...
Yeah.
You're talking about the pencils.
Yeah.
No, that's true. Yeah, that is.
Can I go back to something you said earlier, Klaus? And you know, for a brief second there. Well, typically I do this anyway when both Mattteo and Shawn are talking, but in this case, I actually had something to think about, and I zoned out and thought about something else altogether. You said something interesting where you have now arrived at a time in your career in which you're enjoying that drawing again. Correct me. By the way, I want your guys' feedback on this. When we all first started drawing, it was never for the immediate intent of like drawing for comics or drawing for a living, right? It was just the sincere joy of like, oh my gosh, I can draw this, but regardless of where your influences come from, whether it be comics, film, whatever, right? And then somehow we allow people to tell us what the metrics are, what good and what successful looks like. So now we start incorporating that, right? Either actively or, you know, subliminally, but I think it's a combination of both. And you do that in your case, Klaus, you do that for like 50 years. It's going to be a minute before you can kind of get all of those influences out of your system again and go find a thing at the beginning that made you go, wow, I really love drawing. So I am so glad that between you and Mattteo, maybe potentially Shawn, although Shawn still struggles. I can tell by the arch on his back. He's just hating every moment at the desk. That, you know, you guys are finding the opportunity and the joy again, right? Like I loved hearing both of you in a way similarly say the spirit of like, I got to, you know, Mattteo was like, oh, it's lunchtime. I'm not done with this page yet, right? That's weird to me, you know, like I go like, yeah, because you've been programmed for, in Matteo's case, maybe a decade plus to think of things in that context, to, you know, understand what good is, not based on the feeling that you're getting off of the piece, but because good is something, a metric, a razor that somebody established for you. And good means turn in by X amount, you know, get this much page rate back. Instead, you're now just focusing on like, I'm experiencing joy again, right? A lot of people lose track of that. And I would hope that it's always, at the very least, one of the pillars that you put, you know, into the ground when you decide, I want to draw for a living, you know?
I think you're 100% correct. I think that you lose sight of the satisfaction that you get from drawing well, because your priorities are always hitting the mark, you know, hitting the deadline. I mean, you don't lose sight of it 100%, of course. I think we all agree with that. But there's definitely a shift, you know, from 70 to 30, you know, 70% worried about the deadline, or, you know, 80%, whatever it is. But there's definitely a shift now in priorities. And I have to say, I'm incredibly grateful to be at this point.
Man.
It's you know, in a way, I never thought that I could. You know, as a kid, I never thought that I could make it in comics, and you know, I still have doubts about that. But you know, at this point, I think about the ability to make it as an artist, you know, not as a cog in a larger machinery. You know, I think about what it means to be an artist and what it means to be a storyteller.
That's great.
And I really like that a lot. I like that. But,
so I wanted to add something about what you were saying, Eric. I think that one of the reasons why this mentality that you were talking about comes from is that we're one of the few jobs that gets paid, still paid by the page and not by the time. So of course, your new frame of reference is to do the page.
Yeah. Sure.
So I think it comes naturally with the nature of a work. And I want to ask you, Klaus, was it always that way? Like being a comic book artist, was it always being paid by the page, or in the early days, you would just go work in the studio for X amount of hours and get paid by the hours? Did it ever happen?
No, it was always by the page. Right? I mean, guys, was it different for you? For me, it was always by the page.
Yeah. It was page rate. Yep.
Yeah, always for me.
Yeah. And I remember distinctly getting my first page rate up at Marvel. Rich Buckler asked me to ink Black Panther, and the two of us were chasing Roy Thomas through the offices of Marvel, asking what my page rate was or could be, and it was $40 a page. Which was, to me, it was, I could eat more beans and hot dogs.
Let me try to clean up the statement that I made in as far as, having an external intrinsic force telling you what good looks like. The thing that I was trying to get at was that anytime that you have a job, everybody sets up the job as far as what success for that particular company. The moment you start working for those people, they have their standards, right? I have nothing against that, right? If you go into a space and say, hey, I want to work for this company, you have to live up to whatever company culture they have set up in front of you. That's just the way business works. That's how capitalism works. But I would hope that within the context of that, you always reserve enough where you understand what good looks like for you. Right. Sometimes it doesn't jibe well with a deadline, because naturally some things you just got to I got to get this out. I ate too many hot dogs and beans before, I started working on this or whatever it is. But somewhere in there, it has to be a portion where you keep for yourself. And I think oftentimes when people get disillusioned or get lost or really have a really poor taste in their mouth when it comes to drawing comics for a living, it's because they lost track of that. They go and point in the thing. It's I was never allowed to succeed because this external factor told me that I had to do it their way. I'm that's probably true, but you're hard partitioning that experience because you didn't do the internal exercise of saying, actually, this is what good looks like for me, right? And I need to be able to at the very least experience that once in a while. And a lot of people get lost. I know I did. I'll speak for there's Mattteo said, I can't remember, this was maybe 2 or 3 conversations ago, potentially even offline. Matty, you correct me if I'm missing the point. He's like, Eric, have you ever thought about going back to comics again? Full time as a potential sort of here's the next phase in your career. And I thought about that. In the moment, my knee-jerk reaction was no, but I wanted to know for myself why that was. Why didn't I? And it's exactly what you're talking about, Matty, you're talking about, Klaus, which is you get to a point where you value, forgive the term, the love that you're experiencing when you're just drawing for yourself. You value that more than the external validation that a dollar bill, that's going into your bank account. Now, hey, if you got to eat, you got to eat. But at this, very specific phase in my life, I have the choice not to go into that space. So I will draw comics. I love them, right? I just don't find myself compelled to go draw it for somebody else. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Absolutely.
And let me add, Eric, that the what you're discussing, what you're talking about, which I appreciate very much, with all of you on this podcast, is that what you're talking about is you're being self-aware, and I think that being aware of what motivates you and where your satisfaction comes from and what kind of person you are and what you need in order to be happy is not something that everyone has. And one of the things why I admire everyone on this podcast is because you do have that. This isn't the first time we've discussed some of this, some of these subjects. So I know from experience that everybody on this podcast is self-aware in terms of what they need and what they like and what they love, and you understand yourself. And I think that's something that's really necessary, not only for success in this business, but for success in your life. If you're not self-aware, what's the expression? If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. That's kind of what I mean. You're just drifting instead of making your life. You're just drifting in your life.
Yeah, very good point.
And I think that's what you were saying, Eric. Right? I mean, that's.
I mean, in a way, right?
Yeah.
Like you. There's like, for instance, I'm going to go back to this example that we had when we were trying to polish up this podcast. We brought Jamie on. By the way, this is by no means a statement against Jamie. As a matter of fact, he's been a boon to the overall polish and presentation of this thing. But when we brought Jamie on, everybody in our group chat was super enthusiastic about doing it. Let's make sure that it looks X, Y, and Z, the level of polish, the level of presentation. And I took a minute to say, like, guys, do we really need this? And in the group chat or like in text, the context goes away, right? So I had to really explain, to be like, as a collective, and this goes back to your point, Klaus, of like self-awareness. As a collective, are we aware that we are doing this for our needs? Like, we genuinely need this. This is the thing that we need. Or are we doing it because it's an external thing, whether it be subliminal or purposeful, that's telling us we need to go into this space? So we had a discussion about it. At the end of the day, we all agreed. Jamie, thank you so much for coming on. But ultimately, I think that's what we're coming from.
You're fired, though. We just changed our mind. Thank you for the hard work, and see ya.
I think it's a matter of like understand, like, just again to your self-awareness point, which is be aware that that's exactly what's happening, right? Sometimes people are comfortable with. I don't know how many comic book artists that I've had the opportunity and the pleasure of being able to talk to, still working in the mainstream. They love it. And I'm like, holy cow, but you clearly are in love with doing that. But some people who fall out of love with it don't necessarily fall out of love with comics. They fall out of love with that intrinsic external, concept of like, this is what the value of your work looks like, right? Some people are okay with it. Some people aren't. Now, Shawn, I want to go back. It's not always a piling on thing with you. I promise. Here's a compliment. It is.
Wait.
8:49 a.m. April 24th.
No,
I think in the time where you like when in the drama, that's not the right word, but like in the blight that was at one point, you were feeling poor about like you're not getting any work. That compelled you to do the work that you're doing now.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Which I think is freaking awesome. It was compelled. It wasn't self-chosen, but I think in that, everybody, it doesn't ultimately matter how you got there. The fact that you got there is the most important part, right? Where your hit to miss ratio, suddenly it shoots up because you're not having to worry about, is this going to sell 1 million copies? Is this going to, is the external validation going to come because some number comes in, or I'm part of a group, or I'm working on a title. Now it starts to become about like, the joy and experience of being able to draw in the capacity that you want to draw. Now, there's the compliment.
Okay, here we go.
It is now 8:50, April 24th. Right?
I don't know.
It's not to say that the stuff that you're drawing is any good. You know what I mean? Right? I'm not saying like the stuff that you're doing now, independent of a deadline, is any good. Right?
Oh, yes, I'm well aware you're not saying that.
I'm just saying that you're getting the chance to do it on your own. You know what I mean?
Yes, I understand. I mean, you couldn't just compliment me. You had to get back in there and like take it back a little bit. Just slap me around a little bit.
That was a compliment in the beginning.
Right. But then you had to end it with a little 1-2.
Life is full of like different perspectives. If you chose to look at the rainy cloud as opposed to the silver lining that I gave you, that's a you concept. That's not a me concept.
Says the man in the red room in all black.
Hey, wait, let me address that. I knew Klaus was showing up, so I wore a dark blue shirt as opposed to a black shirt. I introduced a hue for Klaus.
Hey, before we end, I did want to ask Klaus something.
Yeah.
Klaus, and correct me if I'm wrong on anything I'm saying here, but sure. It seems to me you came in with a class of artists. It was you and I think Bill Sienkiewicz and Frank Miller and Walter Simonson and Howard Chaykin, and shortly after people like David Mazzucchelli. But you guys kind of came in and took the medium to new heights. You elevated comics, and being a fan as a kid, as I was reading this, it excited me and it made me want to continue to do that. And I saw like the classes of incoming artists really trying to continue that trend of like challenging the medium, raising what it can do, raising how it's done.
See, Eric, that's how you make compliments to people.
I'm taking note. I'm definitely taking note.
But it seems like when we talk about how that. What are you doing?
Listen, I'm sharing this screen because you're talking about a generation, right? And here's the interview that I was talking about in regards to like comics. You know, I'll get to it and this is me. You're throwing the lob. I'm coming in and assisting on that lob. Will you just see Mattteo in my way, complimentary? Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it seems like we've been talking over the past few years of how that constant elevation of the medium has now dipping downwards. Do you have any thoughts on what has happened to? Oh, there's the picture, Klaus.
There it is. Look at that.
Wow.
Look at that handsome guy. That's 3 or 2 buttons down, you guys. That is an open shirt of an era that you cannot pull that off right now.
Dude, I love Dennis is rocking those Adidas. Those are great.
Dude, can I show you something else about Dennis right now? Get ready. Here's the bit. And by the way, this is not making light of this man's contributions, but there is a bandana on this man that I do not think people can pull. Like, it's a blazer, a bandana, a handkerchief in the shirt, and a handkerchief in the pocket, and that is a level of style that not many people of his era, much less now, could pull off. So that's freaking amazing.
That is true.
But let's go back to Klaus. Look at this. Hello. Look at the casual way that man is just relaxed in that chair.
I think this is answering my question. They were just a different class of people back then. Of course, they elevated the medium.
Yeah,
I still have that shirt, by the way.
And you still rock that shirt. Next convention, that's what you're wearing, Klaus.
That's what I'm wearing. That's right.
You're cosplaying as yourself.
Listen,
here's what when Shawn said that, when Shawn was saying like, "Oh, you guys elevated a medium," I smirked because were you aware of that, Klaus, or was it just working? You know what I mean? Like.
I think that's a really good question. I don't think that we were aware of elevating the medium, so to speak. I think what we were aware of, at least I was, and I would mention other people too, along with the people you mentioned, like Steve Gerber and Jim Starlin, and,
absolutely,
different Bill Mantlo to a great degree. People. Craig Russell, or early on, I think what people were concerned with was pushing the medium, and whether it was successful or whether it was, whether it was not successful. I don't think we were trying to elevate the medium. We were trying to change it.
That's interesting.
Or contribute to it,
right? Contribute. I like that one.
To change it, and elevating the medium seems so lofty, although I will admit that I still think about that. I still think about the possibility that we have not reached our peak. And it frustrates me to a great degree, because you think, well, I've been doing this for 50 years. Why haven't we hit that mark yet, that where the medium fulfills its possibilities? And I still think we're a little bit below that. There are times when we've come close, I guess, Art Spiegelman and Maus and things like that. But that's not everyday comics. That's we, and maybe it's because of deadlines, and maybe it's because of financial considerations. But I think that what we were really interested in doing was, first of all, having fun and trying things. We were invested in trying stuff to see if it would work. And some of that, and a lot of that, was just because we didn't know what we were doing. And so we were just trying things to see if this would work, and have fun while we were doing it. I can't, I could never convey to you or to anyone else that I meet how much fun the 70s and the 80s were. And what
well, that was cocaine. I mean, right?
I was about to say the same thing. Yeah, of course. With all those drugs, yes. We know.
I was so innocent. I got to tell you, not a chance that's true in my case.
You're doing that now. Now you're doing a lot of cocaine. I saw you sometimes in the toilets at shows.
Right, he doesn't even wait to the toilet. He's doing it at the table. You know what I mean? I was like, I wish
you guys are ruthless.
I'm looking at Klaus doing lines with a rolled up, $100 bill, and I'm thinking to myself, one day, Eric, one day.
Some clients at shows, they pay Klaus in cocaine, not even money, I think.
Make sure nobody believes that, because
No, we're joking. We're totally joking. We're just being fools.
I don't want anybody to come up to me at a
Klaus. No one takes us seriously. No one takes us seriously. Don't worry about
it. We don't even take ourselves seriously.
In case that happens, Klaus, and somebody would believe me and they bring cocaine to you, just detour. Just tell them to come to my place. Right?
I knew that was coming, Matt.
You said that there's no way for you to really sort of communicate how much fun that you guys were doing, at least from the other side of the glass, right? But I know from my experience in collecting, or at least back collecting, some of those issues from back then, I could tell, I could tell how much fun that was happening, because it's the thing that inspired me to want to be part of that. You see people have, in whatever capacity, you're like, oh my gosh, these people are enjoying themselves. I want to go try that. In this case, it was speaking directly to me because I wanted to be an artist for a living. So when you see comic books that are a little bit off the wall, but still within the context of quote unquote mainstream, you can just I want to go try that. And you said one of our greater successes in this, my system's brain working. One of our greater successes, because number one, we didn't know what we were doing, but I'm like, that's kind of dismissive, right? That's kind of dismissive, might be true.
Is. Yeah, I agree.
Right? But it's dismissive of the actual thing that was happening, at least culturally, within the context of comics, which is we want to try everything. Right? Even though we don't know what we're doing, the spirit of wanting to try stuff independent of immediate success, or some kind of calculated success. You just wanted to try because you wanted to push. And that's the other one that I just kind of pulled from what you were talking about, which is you wanted to see what the limits and where the seams were as far as the medium was concerned. Not to elevate it, but just to go figure out, okay, if we have Mouse on one end, right? What else is on the other end of this, right? And I think it's exactly what you're talking about when you say I don't know if we have yet to meet that capacity, because somewhere along the line, somebody said, let's stop pushing. Let's opt for a calculated version of success.
That is exactly right, by the way. that somewhere along the line, oh, what the hell is this? Can you still hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yep.
good.
Okay, I just got an ad. An ad for an ad block. That's great. So I'm just going to keep on talking. But somewhere along the line, Eric, you're absolutely right that we lost the support for trying something.
There it is.
And I think, and also you can't separate what happened in the 70s and 80s from what happened in the 60s, because we grew up in that generation in the 60s where there was a desire to push boundaries and try things in all areas. Politics, music, drugs, all of that stuff. And so we approached the 70s and 80s, looking at it in retrospect, with the idea of continuing to push boundaries. And it just so happened we were doing it in comics.
Yeah.
So,
and you're saying that at some point the publishers were no longer open to this trying of things?
I think less so, yes. I think that's what happened.
When and why do you think that happened?
I think people got scared that, the sales were dropping, corporations were taking over, editors started to lose their power, which is still very much the case today, except worse. It's very difficult to be creative in a committee setting. And so everything these days is, decided by a committee, which means literally 8, 9, 10 people. And it's got to go through all these steps. And eventually it gets whittled down to nothing. And in the 70s and in the 80s, the editor was your support system and the only person that you had to please and the only person that was able to make the decisions on a book. There was no committee, so to speak. So you look at it historically, you put the 60s as a preface to the 70s and 80s. And then the 90s, when the corporations started coming in and bankruptcy started coming in, that's when it really changed.
Yeah. I often hear a lot of YouTubers talk about what happened, blah, blah, blah. And I always think, anytime that I see any sort of failure on the product end, right, I often go like, it's not for, I want to extend the courtesy to the people who are making that product as far as boots on the ground. I'm like, it's not for their lack of trying. I often point to leadership. I often point to the culture that leadership has established in that particular company, in that particular group of people. And sure, it was partly in the story that you tell, it's partially fueled by the sort of this cultural zeitgeist, but that somehow trickled down into just the conduct of the people inside the comic book rooms themselves, right? If the outward is telling them, hey, it's okay to push a bunch of boundaries, why can't we do it here? There's something really profound about that, because that same mechanism is telling people don't push boundaries these days, like push less boundaries, be a little bit more risk averse, put more gates into place as far as like tastemakers are concerned. That's a lot of heartbreak. And what I'm hoping for is that it's, once it stops becoming quote unquote big business, we get back into that space again. So I wanted to sort of get your insight on that. Was it, in the time when you were pushing on those boundaries, was comic big business? Did they see it as like, oh my gosh, we're going to, bankroll the next, foreign government with this kind of money? But you know what I mean? Like, was it as big business back then as they seemingly try to present it to be now?
Not to the degree that it is today. But sales were always something that people were concerned about, and sales were always something that the people at the top used as a metric to gauge success or not success.
Yeah.
And I don't lament that. I don't lament the change, at Marvel or DC or the corporatization of the companies. It's a natural progression of where we were and where we are now. And the reason why I don't lament that change is because there are other options. There are smaller publishers that don't have the reach or the prestige or the name recognition, but there are tons of opportunities and tons of different options where you want to do a comic about robots and dinosaurs, which apparently everybody does. But you can find an outlet for that. There's no, you can self-publish. None of that really, was available. You had like Wallywood Witsend, right? That would be like an anomaly, and that was amazing to be able to have access to. But smaller publishers can compete with larger. With Marvel and DC and afford greater freedom and opportunities, and you want to push the medium, you can find a place to do it. By the way, I think art is much better today than it was in the 70s and the 80s.
Oh, right.
I mean, there's so many amazingly talented people that are working, and that because of the internet, and we all know this, are available. We see their work, we see what they're doing, and we, it isn't limited to the tri-state area the way it was in the 70s or in the 80s.
Right.
Anyway.
Sure. Right.
Yeah. And on the spirit of that, actually, between Shawn, myself, and Mattteo, and I don't know if you've been seeing some of the stuff that Mattteo is uploading, it's inspired stuff. It's so gross really every time I have to be exposed to it because it's really annoying. It's the same feeling that I got the first time that I started seeing Kevin Nolan at any sort of consistent drip capacity.
That's right. I agree with you.
This is so annoying how good this is.
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
I wasn't as cynical. I was really quite inspired. You know what I mean? Like back then I'd see a Kevin Nolan anything and be like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. So that level of inspiration transformed into the overall begrudging annoyance that I have towards whenever I see something just as good. And when I see Matteo's stuff, I'm like, this is so fucking stupid. It's so annoying how good this is.
How competitive are the three of you? And not between it or among each other, but just competitive in general. And when you see someone like Kevin Nolan, do you feel competitive?
No. Go ahead, you guys.
I feel inspired. Like when I see it inspires me. It challenges me. It makes me want to do better. But I don't feel like I want to compete with it.
Mattteo, how do you feel?
Yeah. I think competitive is a bit too harsh as a term. Like I see it, and I'm like in my head, I'm like, if I see something that is amazing, I'm like, wow. It's incredible that a human being did that. I want to do that too. So I'm going to try and reach the same level. So it's competitive, but not in a, sport way, meaning that, I gotta beat that guy.
Right.
Because there's not, a direct competition.
Right. I see it. And I look at, like when I see something like we're talking about Kevin Nolan. So if I see a great Kevin Nolan piece and it just blows me away, the next thing I'm doing is dissecting it for the lesson so that I can then take that lesson and apply it. So it's not so much, it's not competition. It's inspiration, I think is the better word.
How about you, Klaus? Right. Are you competitive?
I am competitive. And I like your definition of it, Mattteo. Maybe competitive is a too strong a word, but Yeah, I do feel competitive, and I feel all the other things too. Inspire and inspiration, and learning from that. But I feel competitive.
To what extent does that that competitiveness manifest itself, Klaus? Are you like, writing people's addresses down, going to visit their houses, looking through their windows, and like planning their murder? How does it manifest itself once it's somebody pushes that competitive button? What does competitive Klaus look like?
Usually a lot of self annihilation. I'm not as good as this guy. What's wrong with you?
Oh, all right.
That kind of a thing.
I'm in touch with that. I guess I didn't see that as competition. That's just self-loathing.
Yeah. Well, it's self-loathing leading to self-annihilation, and then you pick yourself up the next day and you start all over again, right? You learn from it, but there, that self-loathing is definitely a stop along the way. Yeah.
It's interesting how we interpret that term very differently. And I want to tell you guys a story and it's in context to what happened to me recently being laid off, right? And this shows my level of competition, but it's also the mechanism that I engage that allows me to understand how to get better at my craft. So it's different for everybody. There's this documentary called The Last Dance. It's about the World Championships Chicago Bulls, and it's one segment. They were talking about how Michael Jordan was performing really poorly in the game against the Washington Wizards, or the Washington Bullets at that time, and it gets out into the media that whoever was competing against him was talking all sorts of shit to him during the game, just talking all sorts of trash. Mike, who do you think you are? You can't score on me, blah, blah, blah. And I guess in that time, to his credit, that Mike only dropped like 12 points, something, abnormally low for a legend like him. So the next couple of weeks, Washington goes and visits Chicago, and Mike lights that guy up for like 40 some odd points. Right, in sort of like the statement of revenge, Fast forward to now, and they go and interview that guy and the team that was supposedly talking shit to him. Like, that never happened. that was manufactured by Michael Jordan himself, because he needed to motivate himself to perform at a level that was the expectation of who he was. And they even confirmed it with him. They're like, did he really say all those awful things to you during the game? He goes, no, I just needed to tell myself these little lies. So to that end, that is the level of my competition. In my head, when somebody says, hey, you can't do that, or this is not available to you in whatever capacity, especially when it comes to my craft, that's the thing that I engage. That's the mechanism. Like, oh, really? We'll see. There's that, I jokingly tell this to my wife, where, there's that end scene in the after ends credit of whatever movie where Thanos grabs the glove, and he says, like, fine, I'll do it myself. I say that to myself all the time when somebody says you're not allowed to excel in this space, right? So again, it's interesting to me, the muscles or the mechanisms that we all engage in order to go and get the thing that allows us to get good at what we do. If I'm an asshole now, it's even more of an asshole when you tell me that I can't fucking have that thing that I want to have.
I get that. You don't regret that, do you, Eric?
I do not, because it served me well.
Yeah, that's right.
One last story before we have to go, because I think we are way past our hour. When I first started wanting to work in mainstream industry, the one book I wanted to draw was Superman. I grew up on Superman. I loved all the Superman books, from like everything that was the stuff that my cousin was sort of like handing down to me, to like all the movie adaptation with Christopher Reeve. I just drew the hell out of Superman. So when I wanted to be a comic book artist, that was near my target reticle. That was dead center. And I struggled really, really hard in getting that gig. And it got to the point where my best friend, the godfather to my children, a director by the name of Sam Liu, said, they'll never let you draw Superman, at least not with that style that you have, which admittedly in retrospect, they should have never let me draw Superman.
So Eric dedicated his life to becoming Lex Luthor.
That's it, exactly. That's why I shaved my head. You know what I mean? When I'm not here, I'm wearing white suits and dark shirts and dark ties. But so, I remember Maureen McTeague was the editor of the book, and Mark Chiarello introduced me to that office, and they had a fill-in issue in which they actually, I don't know why they did it, but they let me draw Superman for the first time. And I remember back when faxes were still irrelevant, when the script started coming through the fax machine in the office. I was still working in animation at the time. And I took those faxes, stapled them, walked over to my friend's office, who was a director at the time, and taped it to his door. To basically say, like, fuck you, they let me draw Superman. All right. That's our hour. And that's the story time. Thank you, Klaus.
That's a good moment.
Thank you, Klaus. This is great.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, Klaus.
Thanks. Please believe me. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much. I'll see you on the road.
The Inkpulp Podcast.
Hey guys, my new sketchbook, Dumb Shark, is finally out.
That's great, Fratello. Congrats. Eric, what do you think?
Wow, Mattteo. This book has really changed how I think about art. The style, the details, the inking techniques, not to mention the colors. Everything on this book is off the chart. You are so far ahead of any other artist, especially me. I know I always say I don't like your Mr. Freeze book, but that's actually a lie. I was just jealous of your incredible talent because I love everything you do. And sadly, I know deep in my heart that I'll never be at your extraordinary level. You truly are the best artist on planet Earth. This book is a game changer, man. I think everyone out there should go and order Matteo's new art book, Dumb Shark, before it sells out.
Gee willikers, Eric. That was an incredible endorsement. You really made me want to buy it. How can I get my hands on it?
You can find it on www.essentialsequential.com, or if you're in Europe, you can order it on www.pulps.fr.
Wow, Eric. I didn't know you were such a big fan of mine. Thank you. I really don't need to add anything else. You said it all.
What an asshole.
Wait, what?